Got 901 on the dial, folks. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us this morning. Mr. Fry, take it away.
Thanks, Jeff. Good morning, everybody. As normal, we are recording today, so if you need to refer back to it, you'll be able to on our YouTube channel and our website. If you have any troubleshooting issues, please put those questions into the chat feature, and I will do my best to help you through those. Just be aware that most of the time the issues stem from your Wi-Fi connection. Going to try something a little new today. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask those as the presentation is going on. If you do not have a microphone and you have a question or are not comfortable asking via microphone, you can still put those questions into the chat feature and I will prompt Clark as needed. While Clark is presenting and there's no questions being asked, please remain muted so there isn't any background noise. And there is one button I'd like you all to avoid hitting. It says present now or share your screen. Please do not click that, as that will interrupt the presentation. And finally, if anyone has called in via telephone today, please send me an email at mfrey@pjhq.com. That way we'll make sure you can get your MSR credits. I'll turn it back over to Jeff. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. All right, so it almost looks like we have a little bit of a tandem pair going on this morning with Mr. Lewis and Mr. Karpus. But Mr. Lewis is going to be doing our presentation today. He hails from the Great White North at Valley Country Club. Mr. Lewis, please set us up for a wonderful morning, my friend.
I shall. We can never sing this song too often for our great country. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming? And the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Okay. Well, thank you very much. I see a round of applause coming there. Great. My wife is here. She said I did a good job, so she's my manager. Okay.
Or better than the weekend at the Super Bowl, Clarky.
Oh, brother, I hate to comment negatively, but on anything that happened there, but yeah, what are you going to do? Now, Matt, where I go? Minimize here?
Yes.
Matt, tell me how to get to my program.
Yeah, just minimize that screen there.
Minimize this guy here. Okay.
And then there's your
here I am.
Yep.
All right, good. Okay, so now we're going to go to slideshow. Then we'll go to from current slide, and we're ready to go. Now, you'll notice, and I've said this before, so I would talk about repetition and bringing things up. You're going to see a lot of a repetition, especially about the relief areas. You know, and you're going to know this, but once again, it never hurts to go over it again and again. There's some little idiosyncrasies in the when you're dropping that you want to really reinforce, you know, and you'll see them. But there's a lot of that in this that you've already gone over. But bear with me. It's designed by a very excellent gentleman, Mr. David Stabler, to really reinforce and help you learn the rules. And that also brings to mind, there's a website called I'm just thinking about this now. The Roving Official. And if you go to that website, if you're really interested in, getting this under your belt, go to that roving official, and it's going to take you some time to get through the whole presentation. But the way it's done, Lou Blakey, the great mind from the USGA, has produced this, and I recommend it for those of you who are really into this and really want to get into the weeds and really reinforce your knowledge. The roving official. But here we go. These are fun rules. I like these rules that we're going to do today. Not that I don't like every rule, but these seem to be more lighthearted to me than the last ones that I did. Okay, here we go. Here's our purpose, of course. You've got penalty areas, not hazards. You owe $1 whenever you say hazards. Give it to charity. You got options for when you're in there. And then you have options when you play a ball from there. The old 26-2, which was very hard to remember, but they really have cleaned that up. And then there's no relief under other rules for ball and penalty area. Okay. Covers a definition, of course. You got to have that. Then it's going to tell us how we can determine if it's actually in there under the rules. And it tells us here that the same rules that are used in the general area apply, playing a ball from a penalty area. And options for taking relief outside. This is what you can do when you're in there, unless you choose to play the ball as it lies, and then we go on from there. Then you have mandatory relief procedures because you've got this new thing we call now a no-play zone. That's a place where you can't play from, and there are other idiosyncrasies about that when it's in a hazard, and then when you're playing from that penalty area and the ball doesn't get out of there, or it gets out of there and goes out of bounds, things like that, what do you do? This was the old 26-2. Here's our questions. They're looking for the false. Bodies of water are penalty areas by definition. Areas that are not bodies of water, where balls are often not found, and if found, often not playable, may be marked as penalty areas by the committee. If a bridge is partly inside the lines defining the penalty area and partly outside, the entire bridge is treated as being in the penalty area. And D, if a ball lies partly inside and partly outside a penalty area, it is treated as in the penalty area. Now, you be thinking what your answer is now, and hopefully we can enlighten you further. Now, 17 is the specific rule for this. Bodies of water, these are a definition. Other areas defined by the committee where a ball is often lost and unplayable, or I should say unable to be played. Now, for one penalty stroke, we know some of these things are pretty obvious now. We know them. They can use these relief options to get outside of the penalty area. Okay. And here's an introduction. What do you 17.1? This just tells you what we're going to go over here. No sense me reading those. You can read them for yourself. And as I alluded to, I use that word quite often. And the no-play zone situation. Okay, now here's your definition. It's an area from which relief with a one-stroke penalty is allowed if the player's ball comes to rest there. Pretty simple. And let's go. What is a penalty area? It's any body of water on the course, whether or not marked by the committee, including those things. Talk about ditch. We know about sea, pond, lake, river. But what about, we got ditch, we got surface drainage ditch, or any open water course, even if it does not contain water. Or any other part of the course, and this is something we can do now. This is the Pocono rule. We, those of us up here with unplayable areas, where certain places we really wouldn't want players to go, alongside the fairways and rough, can now declare any part that the committee wants to, can declare a penalty area. And, you know, it's one of the 5 defined areas of the course, and there they are. I think I'm hearing someone in the background. If everyone could mute, that's good. Unless it's Mr. Karpus or someone who wants to ask a question.
How do I mute, Clark? I'm sorry, I'm having a problem.
Oh, wait a minute. Say that again. I want to pick that voice up.
It's Bill Brander. I'm not able to mute for some reason. I don't know why.
Okay.
Bill, down at the bottom of your screen, if you move your mouse down to the bottom, a little white bar should pop up. And there'll be a microphone icon that you can click. It'll turn red.
Okay, I see it, I think.
Okay. Very good. All right. So there you go. Now, 2 kinds. We know there's 2 kinds. A lot of this stuff, you know it very well, but let's just go over it. Yellow and red. Pretty simple. Now, yellow, marked with yellow lines or stakes, and it gives 2 relief options. We can always play the ball, you know, we're counting 2 relief options. Now, red penalty areas, you have an extra, they're marked, of course, with red lines and stakes. You have an extra lateral relief option under 17, in addition to the 2 relief options available for yellow penalty areas. Now, if it hasn't been marked, remember this. This is another, one of what I talk about as an exam record. If it has not been marked, if you're about to take the exam, you will see this question on the exam, I guarantee you. Then it's treated as a red penalty area. Should be marked. They should all be marked, but if not, and we're going to talk about when they're not marked, how you define where the line ought to be. We have a hole like this in the Poconos up here, and it's almost exactly like this. And it's a tough little hole. But all those things are going to be red. Even that part back in the fairway there where that you basically have to go directly over, that's still going to be red because there's no marking. Now, another thing very important you might see on an exam. The edge of a penalty area extends both up and down below the ground, up and down. Okay. This means all ground and anything else, such as natural or artificial objects, remember that, inside this area here, are deemed to be, whether they're on, above, or below the surface of the ground, okay, they're going to be deemed to be inside there. Now, once again, this is I remember something about this recently. If an object is both inside and outside the edge, such as a bridge, or a tree rooted inside the edge with branches extending outside, or vice versa, only the part of the object that is inside the edge is part of the penalty area. A little different from the ground under that we were talking about the other day. Now, they should be defined by stakes, lines, or physical features. Physical features. And a gentleman asked me recently about physical features. I think it was down at Concord, and he's defining one of his areas rather than draw an endless line around it, defining it by the physical features, and that's making that a penalty area, and you can do that. So here we have all the 3 things. Now, when stakes are used, the edge of the penalty area is defined by the line on the outside of the stakes at ground level. And this puts the stakes inside the penalty area. Now, when we have lines, it's the outside edge of the line, and the line itself is going to be considered to be inside the penalty area. Okay. Now, someone have a question? Okay. And once again, here is this physical feature thing. And I think it's okay to use this if it's pretty clear that I am hearing someone someone needs to unmute or to mute. Okay. You want to make sure if you're going to do this. I have a couple of places on my golf course where you could do this, but I haven't thought about doing it yet. If you could say how the edge of it is defined, you got to be very clear so that the player knows where he is and he can apply a rule. Now, stakes may be used when you have lines or physical features. Stakes can be used, now listen to the words here, to show where the penalty area is. We used to say indicate rather than we used to have indicate and define. But those stakes have no other meaning. Now, here we are. We haven't, for whatever reason, we have not decided to do our job, whether it be and I don't know how this works for a lot of you out there. Maybe your superintendent does this for you, and you will check it out for on check him out, or whether you do it yourself. It's defined, if there's nothing there, by natural boundaries. Now, obviously, if there's no, as we just said, this would be a red penalty area. But natural boundaries. This is not a really good way to do this because it says where the ground slopes down to form the depression that can hold the water. Now, that's not a very good way to do it. But once again, if you encounter this, there you have the answer to your question. Now, once again, if the thing does not contain water, such as a drainage ditch, and it could be dry, but now you have a rainy season, the committee can define that whole thing as part of the general area if they want, which means it's not a penalty area. So you won't see those red things. Okay. They're defined by either red or yellow. And this, of course, affects your relief option, as we mentioned. Told you there was a little bit of repetition here. Now, this is important. A player may stand in a penalty area to play a ball outside the penalty area, including after taking relief from the penalty area. That also means that the player can stand in the penalty area to play the ball that he just took relief for, and that's outside the penalty area. I'm going to say that I've saved quite a few players from penalty who thought that when they dropped, usually it takes place on the red penalty area, that when they dropped, and now that after they took a perfect drop, they were still standing in the penalty area. They're getting ready to pick that ball up and drop it again. Don't do that. I go running across the fairway or driving my cart yelling at them, and they wonder what I'm doing. I'm trying to save them from a penalty. Okay, it's in it when any part of the ball lies in or touches the ground or anything else, such as any natural or artificial object that's in there. Okay? And we talked about how to define these. This fellow has, even though he's got that stone wall there, if that yellow line were not there, the player we'd hope that the whoever's marking the golf course off would determine what that place is where that ball is touching, whether he's going to be able to take an unplayable lie if it's an obstruction, or whether it's an integral part of the golf course, and that's what it should be. Now, here's a ball here that I don't see too well, but I can see that ball is in that plant, and it's up above the surface of the ground, and it's obviously inside that penalty area. So it's inside the penalty area. And this is going to tell us, this next one's going to talk about, we have a hierarchy determining this rule 2.2C will tell you about the hierarchy of where we always are favoring penalty area, bunker, putting green, general area. You can look that one up. But this tells you that when it's in both areas, which this is touching that line. And another area, of course, a bunker, we're going to determine that is in the penalty area. Taking the worst case scenario in that case. Now, once again, this, new for 19, but a whole year went by and I had players wondering about this, whether you could do these things. The player may play the ball as it lies without penalty under the same rules that apply in the general area. No special rules. That means move this loose impediment here, no problem. Or you can take this kind of relief, 17.1D or 17.2. You see these different kinds of relief, which are pointed out quite well on those diagrams. These diagrams are great, I think. Okay, exception. There's these darned exceptions. You have to take relief from interference by a no play zone in a penalty area. You must take relief from that. Now, let's go back to our question. Which is false? Bodies of water are penalty areas by definition. And then this question, areas that are not bodies of water, where balls are often not found, and if found, often not playable, may be marked as penalty areas by the committee. If a bridge is partly inside the lines defining a penalty area and partly outside those lines, the entire bridge is treated as in the penalty area. What do we think about that? If a ball lies partly inside and partly outside a penalty area, it is treated as in the penalty area. And here's our answer, of course. It's going to be C. You're not going to treat that as inside the penalty area, the entire bridge. Okay. Here's our next question, which I'll go over. It's fun to think about these. Now we're looking for another false. It's virtually certain that a player's ball in a penalty area when the player puts another ball in play and taking relief under 17. The original ball is no longer in play and must not be played even if found within 3 minutes. Okay, and the player is putting another ball in play. Okay, and he knows that his ball is virtually certain to be in that penalty area. B, the reference point used to determine a player's relief area for back on the line relief is chosen by player. The reference points used for stroke and distance and lateral relief options are not chosen by player, but established by Rule 17. That's an interesting one. If a player's relief area is partially in the general area and partially in a bunker, if the player drops in the right way with the ball first landing in the general area and then rolling and coming to rest in the part of the relief area in the bunker, the player's ball is correctly back in play. If the player's ball lies in a no play zone in a penalty area, the player must take penalty relief outside the penalty area. In the same penalty area without penalty, where there is no interference from the no play zone, is not an option. So we'll come back and talk about that. All right. Now, once again, there's this wonderful term. It is known or virtually certain that a ball came to rest in a penalty area. Known or virtually certain. The player may take penalty relief under these rules, as we discussed before with these similar diagrams. Once the player puts another ball in play to take relief, the original ball is no longer in play and must not be played. Now, remember, we said it's known or virtually certain. Okay, so once you put another ball in play, and take relief in this way, the original ball is no longer in play and must not be played. Even if the original ball is then found on the course before the end of the 3-minute search time. Now, how do you determine if it's in there, including the known or virtually certain thing? Well, you got, if you're in there, here's your relief. So I will discuss how we already discussed how it's in there. You got stroke and distance. You always can go back to where you played the previous stroke from. And if it's the tee, there's rules about, can I re-tee it? Do I have to re-tee it? May I? We've talked about those. You can go back on the line. You know how that works, keeping the point where the ball last crossed the margin. Or you have lateral relief in red penalty areas only. You can only do that in red penalty areas. Another good diagram. Now, when you take stroke and distance, and then once again, this is repetitious, but the original ball or another ball, and could be the tee, general area, or putting green. As you know, when Tiger putted that ball on the 15th hole at Augusta, he putted his ball into the, which was then called a water hazard. He placed his ball, it took stroke and distance, back because it was the putting green. And the rules officials, or I should say the rules officials, I don't want to glorify them, the talking heads went crazy. So here's back on the line relief. This girl is dropping her ball in her relief area, or another ball. Obviously, you're going to need another ball. Sometimes can't get the first one. It's based on a reference line that goes straight back from the hole through the estimated point where the original ball last crossed. Now, this gives you more leeway than you had before, because you had to keep that point and couldn't be very much on the left or right of that line. This is a much better way of doing it with this relief area. And this is a point, and remember this, we're talking about chosen by the player, that is on the reference line. That's your reference point. It's farther from the hole than the estimated point. You can go back as far as you like. You go back to where you're really good with that pitching wedge from 126, and instead of 127, and you drop that ball there. That's your choice. The player should indicate the point by using, this is so important. You should indicate this point. You who play in tournaments and your members, really get them into doing this, because you'll see later on, we have a rule on our hard card which can get you out of a penalty for screwing this up. But if that rule isn't in effect, you can be penalized for doing this incorrectly. Choosing the reference point, you should indicate it. Put a tee down, put something down there. Now, if the player drops the ball without having chosen this point, and this is the point, remember this. This is the point. This is the idea here. All right. I don't know why the player would do that, but the player just doesn't understand it. If he drops the ball without having chosen the point, the reference point is treated by default as being the point on the line that's the same distance from the hole where the dropped ball hit the ground. Okay. So that's going to be the new reference point from which we measure the new penalty area. Now, of course, it's one club length, and we know that. That's the longest club in your bag, except your putter. And so that means you could have, in this case, an 8-foot wide area because of the maximum length of the driver. All right, must not be near the hole. Yes, this is definitely repetitious, but now remember this, it can be, when you're taking this kind of relief here, this back on the line relief, it can be in any area of the course. Well, of course, except the same penalty area. You can't take it back and drop it in the same penalty area, obviously. But that's important to know, because when you're taking relief from, let's say, a cart path or something like that, no. Okay. Now, I discussed this, I think, the other day. When for whatever reason, the player here has decided that they're going to include this other area of the course, this penalty area. Maybe there's nice grass in there, or who knows what it could be. Maybe he wants to drop it in there because he likes the way it looks down there. For whatever reason, it's the player's choice. And it's telling you what to do here. The ball has to come to rest in the relief area in the same area of the course that the ball first touched when dropped in the relief area. Okay, so you see what would happen. Now, this is a rule we have now on our hard card. This is meant to absolve a player, to not trap him when you take back on the line relief and you don't make that decision or you do make that decision about where you're going to drop the ball. So long as the ball that comes to rest outside the relief area, when played, is within one club length of where it first touched the ground when it dropped. Where it first touched the ground when it dropped. And I think that player, if that player played that, there's his new relief area. There's his new place that he can, well, not relief area, but place where he can play the ball from without being penalized. It's a good rule. Now, this is another interesting one here. We learned the other day, I hope, when can a player, let's say, change his relief options, his or her relief options? But this just tells us here, it's a clarification, that a player is not penalized when he improves the area of the area that he's going to drop the ball, which you can't do, but he's dropped the ball in the wrong way. Now he decides to choose a new relief area because he has to drop it again. He's not going to be penalized, so long as the improvement did not also improve that area. Okay. Now we have lateral. Now the reference point here is the estimated point where the original ball last crossed the edge of the red penalty area. At the estimated point. And sometimes you do have to estimate. Sometimes you know exactly. Somebody sees it, an observer, a four-caddy, if you can trust them. Okay. 2 club lengths, but with these limits. You'll see how this is going to be different. Can't be nearer the hole than your reference point. Can be in any area of the course except the same penalty area. So in this case, that could happen. Okay. If more than one area, and this is saying the same thing, if more than one area of the course is located within this 2 club length area, it's just reiterating it. The ball must come to rest in the relief area in the same area of the course that the ball first touched when dropped. Now here we have a red penalty area. And the committee, once again, the new rules took away the implicit ability to drop on either side, opposite margin drop. It took that away so that you had to drop within 2 club lengths of where it last crossed. But a committee can have a model local rule. I have it at my golf course because I have areas similar to this where if the player had a drop, they would be double penalized. There would be big trees just about where that red line is pointing. So I allow the player regardless of where he went in, to go on either side of that as a local rule. That local rule must be in effect. Equidistant place from the hole. And there it is. Ooh, a little sound there. Good. Now, here's a rule, the no play zone in a penalty area. And we know the no play zone is a place where the committee has just decided that they don't want people going in there to play a golf ball. They don't want it even to be interfered with, which we'll see shortly, by a follow through or a backswing or a stance. It's an area that is has become, according to the committee, an inviolate area of the golf course. Now, you can't play the ball as it lies here, as it says. When it's in a no-play zone in a penalty area, or when the no-play zone on the course interferes with stance or swing for the ball in a penalty area. Okay, those two situations. One is we got the ball in the penalty area is in there. The other is the penalty area is not there, but it interferes. You know, it comes over the top, because we know that the area of a penalty area extends vertically to infinity. So when we have this situation, the player is in the no play zone, there it says, and it's in a penalty area, the player must take the relief that he's entitled under this rule, the penalty relief. Now, as I alluded to before, when it interferes with the stance or swing for a ball in the penalty area, player has another option. And the player's ball is in a penalty area, and that's outside the ball is outside the no play zone, but the no play zone is in the penalty area, and so is the ball. So we're going to talk about here how the stance or intended swing would interfere with it. Here it is, interferes with that. The player must either take penalty relief outside the penalty area, or he can take free relief in the penalty area, once again, if that's going to be possible. Okay, so there, once again, 1D or 2, as you know. Okay. Okay, or take free relief if you can do this. If you can get within one club length of where this is happening under Rule 14 that Alice so perfectly discussed the other day. So you do get free relief in that if you can get there. And this goes over the reference point again that tells us about it, but we know this. Well, we know this already. That has to be in the same penalty area where the ball lies and must not be near the hole. But then this just tells us, which we know from many other rules or a number of other rules, that you don't get relief from these things, cart paths, this situation here, and other things, when it's clearly unreasonable because of something other than that, you know, a crazy stance, things like that. You don't get free relief. The thing is in the crotch of a tree, you're not going to get relief from that. So you're going to have to just take your lumps. Or when you choose a club type of stance or swing or direction of play that's clearly unreasonable. Once again, you can't tell the player officials which way to play it, but if he's trying to get over on you by picking some way that's completely ridiculous, you can stop him. Now, here we have a ball that's elsewhere. It's not in the penalty area, but the no play zone interferes. You got to take relief. You got to take relief. So it's there we go. Now, this is our double penalty rule here, which we always see when we're doing this. Let's go over this again. Now we're looking for the false one. It's virtually certain a player's ball is in a penalty area when the player puts another ball in play in taking relief under 17. The original ball is no longer in play, and must not be played even if found within 3 minutes. The reference point used to determine a player's relief area for back-on-the-line relief is chosen by the player. The reference points used for the stroke and distance lateral relief and lateral relief options are not chosen by the player, but established by the rule itself. Just another way of saying, let's think about that. If a player's relief area is partially in the general area and partially in a bunker, if the player drops in the right way with the ball first landing in the general area and then rolling and come to rest in the part of the relief area in the bunker, the player's ball is correctly back in play. Oh my goodness. If a player's ball lies in a no-play zone in a penalty area, the player must take penalty relief outside the penalty area. Same penalty area without penalty where there is no interference from the no-play zone is not an option. So we're looking for the false one here, and it's C. Once again, we really have beaten this one to death. You got 2 areas of the course in your relief area. Ball lands in one area, rolls into the other. You got to drop it again. Okay. Do we have any questions?
No questions have been submitted.
Okay. Sounds good. Now we go to 17.2. Okay. This is the old once again 26.2, much simpler than it used to be, and we're going to go over this one. Now, if you play a ball from a penalty area and you don't get it out of there, what we're saying here, of course, you know you can play it as a lie. There's got no problem there. Or for 1-stroke penalty, you can take relief under the normal relief options. And you're going to see that you got an extra relief option also. And here it is. So this player plays from point A to point B, as you can see, and he can go and play it as a lies. You can always do that. Except, once again, if it's in that no-play zone. Or he can take stroke and distance relief. That means he can drop it back at point A, see, for the stroke and distance, taking that 1 stroke. So if that was his tee shot, he'd have his second shot. He had 1 coming back to the area. He'd be playing, that's 3. He'd be playing his 4th stroke. Yeah, 1 in there, 2, 3, playing his 4th stroke. Now, he can do that. He can take back on the line relief. These are the options that he has. Or he can play from where the last stroke was played from outside the penalty area. Now, let's see. There it is, back on the line. We're going to get back to this in a minute. All right. Now he's got the lateral relief. You see that? Or play from where the last stroke outside the penalty area was made. Okay. Now, when this thing, once again, played from point A to point B, we're going to go into a little more detail here. If he takes the stroke and distance relief by dropping a ball there, then he can decide he doesn't like it. This has happened to me as a rules official many times. Well, I won't say many times, but a number of times where the ball, for whatever reason, drops it there. There's a little area there he can drop it in and play it, and the ball rolls into some area where it ain't too good. Bad country, or into 40 feet of water. If he does this, and he decides not to play the drop ball where it comes to rest, he can take further relief outside that penalty area. You have all his original options for another stroke. For another stroke. So he's going to have 2 strokes total. He picks that ball up from point A and does all these other things that he can do for a total of 2 strokes in the penalty. There you are. 1 more penalty stroke. And it'll tell you in a minute. For a total of 2 penalty strokes. Now, this is a little different. This ball is played from the penalty area, and it's lost out of bounds or unplayable outside the penalty area. We're going to assume if it's still in the penalty area, we know that. well, then it's not lost. He's got so lost, out of bounds, or unplayable outside a penalty area. So after playing a ball from a penalty area, player may be required or may choose to take stroke and distance relief. Now, he may be required because he's hit the ball out of bounds. Obviously, you're going to get a penalty for that. Or you have to declare your ball unplayable for some reason, and you decide to take that stroke and distance relief. In that situation, once again, here as I stated, if he takes stroke and distance relief by dropping a ball in the penalty area, and then he decides not to play that ball, it comes to rest in a bad country, he may take further relief outside the penalty area, okay, with that extra stroke, as we know, total of 2. Or he can, and you'll see in this diagram or in this video that comes up, without first dropping, he can just say, okay, I hit it out of bounds. I'm taking 2, and I'm going to take my original options. So here's a player, as you'll see. He is about to play this ball. Wow. Now you might think coming back to in there, but let's see what happens. I think this might have been his 3rd shot. And the ball goes out of bounds. So they're looking for it, and it's out of bounds. So now he comes back. He gets driven back there, and he can take direct relief. That ball's out of bounds that he hit from the penalty area. Or, and that's what he's going to do here. And actually, he's taken back on the line relief, or take the back on the line relief. And it's for his 6th stroke. And then he hits this ball into a bunker, I believe. Okay, going for a big number anyway. And this is, once again, you see this all the time. You're not going to get penalties heaped upon you from our kinder and gentler USGA PGA. Any questions here?
None yet.
Okay. This I have to say, 26-2 used to be which is what the old rule number was a brutal rule to learn and get into your head, but they've done such a good job. I'm very proud of those who did this on the committee. Now, 17-3 just tells you that when a player's ball is in this area, he's not going to get relief from anything else here, except, as I say all the time, a movable obstruction. Free relief, that is. The ball's in a penalty area. It's embedded. It's unplayable. Can't declare your ball unplayable, as you'll see shortly, in a penalty area. If you do that, you're exposing yourself to some nasty stuff. And the only relief option the player has here is to take penalty relief under 17. And when there's a dangerous animal condition which interferes in the penalty area, player can take free relief either in a penalty area, in the penalty area, or penalty relief outside the penalty area. We talked about that the other day, the alligator thing, with the guy slapping it on his tail. I would not have done that. Any questions there? 17-3? Good. We're going right into 19, unplayable ball. Now, I'll read this because it's important. Some of these things you got to read. Some of these things that you can see them. You can decide to take unplayable relief anywhere except in a penalty area. I just said that. And you're the only one who can decide that. We're going to talk about the relief options for the general area or on the putting green and the bunker when you decide to do this. And it tells you what parts of the course must be used. The ball must be in to use the unplayable ball rule. the 3 unplayable ball, 1 penalty stroke relief options. There's a limit when the ball's in a bunker. We talked about a similar thing the other day with the water in the bunker. Then you have an extra. This is a new thing. You got an extra two-stroke thing there. Now, player takes unplayable relief, but in a wrong place, and plays the ball. The penalty is 3 strokes. 1 for taking unplayable relief, and 2 more for playing from a wrong place. Let's think about that. We're looking for the false one here. If a serious breach of playing from a wrong place is involved in taking 19-2, the player must correct that error by playing the original ball or another ball from a correct place. That sounds pretty good. If a player plays from a wrong place and it's not a serious breach, when taking relief here, the player must play out the hole with the ball played from the wrong place. The stroke made from a wrong place after incorrectly taking Rule 19-2 relief and any subsequent strokes do not count in a player's score. Think about that. Okay. Once again, it allows a player for a penalty stroke to get out of a lousy situation, which is what he's got there. So you can, once again, another reiteration. You can declare this, just can't do it in a penalty area. What do you do in a penalty area? Either play it or take penalty area relief. Okay, now we're going to talk about how to do it in the general area, putting green and bunker. Now the player may decide to treat his or ball as unplayable. Player is the sole judge, as we used to say. The only person, now they say the player is the only person. And here we reiterate, okay, except in a penalty area. We're okay up there, not down below. Now, I just said that. And you can do this in each case, adding a penalty stroke in the general area or on the putting green. Now, the player may stroke in distance, even if the original ball has not been found and identified. You can always take stroke in distance. You hit this thing, you don't know where it is. No problem. You can take this stroke in distance relief, even if the original ball has not been found or identified. And it's going to tell you eventually here how where you cannot, and the other options that come in, you have to know where the ball is, obviously. But you have to take this back on the line relief, you have to know or be virtually certain that it's in there. The player may take the original ball, and you've seen this a number of times, or another ball from where the previous stroke was made. Can drop it back there in the relief area. This is a straight back on the line. This is similar to what we would do in a penalty area. Through the spot of the original ball. Through the spot of the original ball. Not the edge where this, like the edge of this whole thing. It's where the ball lay unplayable. That's your reference point. I should say that's your point for going back. And that the player chooses. And once again, we've seen this a number of times. Farther from the hole. And we're going to say it again, you should put that thing down there. Because once again, as we've said before, I won't read this again for you. If you don't do that, you're going to have a default situation. And 1 club length. Okay, it can be you're taking this kind of relief, it could be anywhere. And here, I think I'm going to say that we know this by now. I would say that if I were in class, I would say that I would ask for a show of hands. Everyone's hand would go up. We know this now. It's got to be in the same area of the course. Now, to take lateral relief, you got to know where the ball is. And you're going to take this, and this question will invariably be on the exam. You'll get a scenario. Okay, and it's the spot of the original ball, not the edge there. You can't come out and go on the edge. Okay. So that's how you can get out of there. But if you were a right-handed player, it would be a little hard there to be dropping that ball in that situation. You might be thinking about doing something else. Lefty might be okay, might not. Where that line or that arrow is pointing. But here's the limits. And once again, any area of the course, we have. Now, suppose that it's not on the ground. Here we have the ball in a bush or a tree, and the player may take lateral relief by using the point on the ground directly below the spot. Okay? So watch this one. It's a good one. So we know that's our ball there. We've identified it. And our reference point is down there. It's 2 club lengths no closer to the hole. Now, in some cases, this might allow a ball to be dropped on a putting green. And yes, there are times when a ball can be dropped on the putting green. If this tree limb extended out there onto the putting green, the player decided, as you'll see, decided to take relief. In this case, the ball would be dropped on the putting green. You can drop the ball on the putting green when you're taking relief from a red penalty area, and it happens to be near a green.
Hey, Clark.
Yes.
Roger just asked. He said, "Sorry if I missed something, but don't you have to identify your ball before determining it to be unplayable?"
Yes, yeah, that's what I mentioned. That's okay. I said that the ball has been found and identified by various means. You can do it with your binoculars, but right now, if someone saw that was your ball that went in there, you're going to be okay to identify it. Yes, you have to know that's your ball. Does that answer Roger's question? I
believe so, yes.
Okay.
Hey, Clarky, the only exception to that is stroke and distance. You don't have to find and identify your ball to proceed under that first option. It's only if you're going back on the line or within 2 club lengths.
That's true. And we discussed that in slides that were just immediately preceding this one. In this case, if you looked at that ball and you couldn't identify it, you might say there are other things. I don't want to get into them quite yet, but there are other things that you can do, one of which is taking stroke and distance. Okay, no problem. Thank you, Tom. All right. And here's our multiple breaches of the rules. Now you'll see there's some changes here. Okay, which of the following is false? In stroke play, when a player takes 19-2 relief. If a player takes unplayable relief, but in a wrong place and plays the ball, the penalty is 3 strokes. 1 for taking unplayable relief, which would be 1 usually, and 2 more for playing from a wrong place. Think about that one. Is that false or true? A serious breach of playing from a wrong place is involved. The player must correct that error by playing the original ball or another ball from the correct place. Well, that would seem pretty true. If a player plays from a wrong place, not a serious breach when taking 19-2 relief, the player must play out the hole with the ball played from the wrong place. All right, and then in stroke play made from a wrong place after incorrectly taking 19-2 relief, and any subsequent strokes don't count in the player's score. So let's see. And it's D. The stroke made from a wrong place after incorrectly taking Rule 19-2 relief, and any subsequent strokes with that ball do not count in a player's score. Okay, when he's correcting. Any questions there?
No, sir.
Okay. Now 19-3, now we're talking about a bunker. Now we're talking about you can take unplayable ball relief for one penalty stroke under any of the options. We know this. You got back on the line relief, but you got to drop it in the bunker. Stroke and distance, that gets you out of the bunker. Even by the way, if that gets you closer to the hole, if you take stroke and distance, yeah, there are times when you can take the ball closer to the hole. In this case, for these scenarios, the ball must be dropped in and come to rest in a relief area in the bunker. Okay. Obviously, you can't take stroke and distance relief if you don't go back to where you played it from under that number one there, one stroke, the fellow there that's playing from the fairway. Okay. Or we've got an extra relief option. When a player's ball is in a bunker, if he or she chooses to take unplayable ball relief for a total of 2 penalty strokes, the player may take back on the line relief outside the bunker. There might be times when this is not a bad idea for 2 strokes. That's a new one. And here's our multiple breaches. And remember, hear what this says? Applying penalties. Player gets, for taking penalty relief, any penalty strokes for taking penalty relief, such as a 1-stroke penalty, are always applied in addition to other penalties. So that's that. That's 17 and 19. Any questions on any of those?
Feel free to unmute yourself if you do have questions.
All right. Well, I'll jump in here and tell you that many years back, I'd say it's going to be about 45 years, I was working at High Point as an assistant there. I was a teaching pro there. And in the winter, I was a bartender, thanks to the beneficence and the generosity of the Smith brothers. And let me augment my income. And we used to have rules discussions then. I was interested. We had a lot of some guys that came in every day and were talking about the rules. And, we were talking about these things. And I mentioned, yes, you could definitely. There are times when you can take a ball closer to the hole. And I had one fellow there, a particularly vociferous individual after a couple of libations, questioned me on that. I said, well, there's times. I said, for example, suppose your ball you have a tremendous shot on a par 3 hole, and your ball is like 3 feet from the hole, and you're putting for a 2, but somehow or other you get a case of the yips, and you putt your ball off the green into a bunker under the lip of the bunker in a footprint. And you decide to declare your ball unplayable. One of your options is stroke and distance penalty. You can take that ball out of there if you choose the stroke and distance option, not the other two, not the B and C options. Those balls have to stay in the bunker. But that first one, stroke and distance, you're going to take it back to where you hit it from. And where was that? 2 feet from the hole, and you're going to get to place the ball. Well, I said that, and this guy, a crowd gathered of inebriated or partially inebriated patrons who just wanted to bet me that I was wrong. And these were steam fitters, attorneys, doctors. They're going to bet me that I'm wrong. I say, fellas, this is what I do. And it didn't matter. So we had quite a bit of cash bet on this thing, and I called the United States Golf Association, and a gentleman by the name of P.J. Boatwright happened to pick up the phone. And I identified myself, and I said, we're on speakerphone here. I said, and I told him the scenario, and he said, oh, no, you're correct. He said, certainly you can do that. He said, for example, what if you're 2 feet from the hole after your tee shot? And he just went chapter and verse. And there were some very, very unhappy individuals in that group. So you don't want to challenge necessarily somebody who might know a little more than you. in their area of expertise. Now I'm going to escape, Matthew. Am I right?
Correct.
All right. Go back to slideshow, and I'm going to go. Oh, wait a minute. This one I have to. Wait a minute. I have to get this because you sent this one to me, right, Matthew?
I sent you one. I don't remember.
No,
which.
18, I'm sorry. You're right. 18 is okay. Let me do. I have to go to 18. So I'll go. Where am I going here? I can go back to. What do I do here?
Go down to the bottom of your screen. See that
Yeah.
folder icon? It's the fourth from the left.
That one.
There you go.
All right. Does that have 18? Does that have 18 in there? Do I see 18?
Yeah, second one there.
Okay, forgive me because I have to get so close to that to see that now. Okay, so we're going to open that up. It is 18 I'm doing, right? Yeah. Okay. All right, so good. No, that's not right. What am I doing wrong here?
You can hit the X on that one there.
Get that one out of there. And rule 18. Okay, very good. Thank you. And we're going to slideshow. And from current slide. Okay, we got a good amount of time to do this. But there's a lot of interesting things here. Once again, we're going to be going over dropping zones and things of that nature. And pent relief areas, I should say. Oh, $1. Okay, and here we go. Purpose, stroke and distance, allowed at any time. You hit it 300 yards down the middle of the fairway in a perfect lie. You said, I'm going to declare my ball. Whatever, I'm just going to take stroke. I'm just going to take stroke and distance. Simple as that. Ball lost or out of bounds. You got to, when do you have to take stroke and distance? And we're going to talk a lot of contingencies here about a provisional ball. Or in my area here of the country, we call those a prudential or a provincial. Now, it's going to tell you how to play under the stroke and distance, when it's required, obviously. Then we're going to determine when a ball is out of bounds, and how do we know that? And how to play a provisional ball, and when you can't, because there's times you can't. Think about that. And when you have to abandon the provisional. This should give rise to questions or two. And when the provisional ball becomes, and you have to abandon the original ball. And then sometimes you have provisional ball for a provisional. I think I mentioned this last time I taught this. We had a qualifier, or it might have even been the PNC at Turning Stone. And there was one of the courses up there is lined, the fairways are all lined with places that the human being cannot go. There were reeds and bulrushes and every other kind of thing. Well, a human being can go there, but you'd rather not. And we had one player that had multiple provisional balls, or a number of players were hitting a second provisional, maybe even a third provisional. And naturally, play was extremely slow that day on that part of the golf course. Now you can choose between a provisional or the original substitute. Okay, this is stroke and distance. When a ball is lost outside a penalty area, listen to that, when a ball is lost outside a penalty area, or it comes to rest out of bounds, so lost or out of bounds, but very important, the penalty area thing there. This makes very good sense. The required progression, I like that, of playing from teeing area to hole is broken, fractured. The player has to resume that progression by playing again where the previous stroke was made. It's a nice way of saying it. Very erudite way of saying it. And then this is going to tell you how to do it. Here's a question. After playing from the teeing area, no matter where a player's ball is on the course, she is not always allowed to play her ball as it lies, but can always play under stroke and distance. Now we're looking for the false one here. A player drops a ball in the general area after saying she is going to play under stroke and distance. If her original ball is found before the end of her 3-minute search time, she can abandon the dropped ball and play the original. Well, now, she's saying that she's going to play under stroke and distance. Keep that in mind. If a ball is found with less than 10 seconds remaining on a player's search time of 3 minutes, and she is not near, we have ladies in this one entirely, and she is not near where the ball is found, she is allowed a reasonable time to get to the ball to promptly identify it, even if this happens after the 3-minute search time has ended. Let's think about that one. And if a player plays under stroke and distance and from a wrong place, the penalty in match play is loss of hole, and stroke play is 3 penalty strokes. So keep that under your hat, and we keep going. So once again, it tells you anytime you can take stroke and distance relief. Stroke and distance relief. Don't confuse that with a provisional ball just yet. And you got to go back from where the original stroke was made. And there's rules about the teeing area, general areas, bunker, penalty area, we talked about that, and the putting green. Okay. Player always has this stroke and distance option. Here the player is in ground under repair, but that player certainly can take his stroke and distance. It looks like he might want to play that one, but it's up to him. And so, in other words, a certain rule, which would be the ground and repair rule, would require him to proceed in a certain way. Now, if he puts another ball in play under the penalty, the original ball is no longer in play and must not be played. You hear that? So he did it properly. Puts another ball in play under stroke and distance. There it is. I'm taking stroke and distance. He puts it in play. You can't play the original ball after that if you've done that. And it's true even if the original ball is found on the course. Okay. Hey, we just found your ball. It's over here. Yeah, sorry, I put another one in play. But it doesn't apply to be, and this is the important part that I was mentioning before. If the player says, I'm going to play a provisional ball, that's different. This is now a provisional ball. Now, this is something that a player can do now that player could not do previously before the rules changed. You had to play that provisional before you moved forward to search for your ball. But now you can search for your ball for a period of time. And if there's time left and you're a fast runner, you can definitely play a provisional ball. Okay, and playing or sometimes a second ball because you're in doubt. Are there any questions there?
None yet.
Good. Because I know a year went by and I was asking players who should know, who should have known, not necessarily golf professionals, but did you know that you can play a provisional ball after you've searched for your original ball for a minute and a half? And they did not know that. So I know everybody here knows that now. Okay. Now, 18-2. When is it lost, and what do you do about it? Here it is. And this is important to know. Not just, hey, I declare my ball lost. I can see it, but I declare it lost. Doesn't work that way. Ball is lost if it's not found in 3 minutes after the player, his or her caddy, begins to search for it. You can hold your caddy back. Wait a minute. We'll all go down there and search for it. I don't want you to, but if your caddy runs down and starts searching for it, the clock starts. Now, if a ball is found in that time, but is uncertain whether it's the player's ball, the player must promptly attempt to identify the ball. You can check Rule 7, but you got to deal with this. Somebody says, I think this might be your ball, and it's in an area where your original ball is likely to be. You gotta deal with it. And you're allowed a reasonable time to do it, even if that happens after the 3-minute search time has ended. Then you can know whether it's, and this includes a reasonable time to get to the ball. If the player is not where the ball is found, or if the player does not identify his or her ball in that reasonable time, then the ball is lost, obviously. Now, this is, we know this, but I get a lot of questions about it. All the ball has to be out of bounds, outside the boundary edge. All the ball. And this is very good diagram here, because you see on the left there, those two X's. Part of that ball is inbounds on the course side. That one there with the green check, just as much inbounds as the other ball. Okay. And if the entire ball now, you see there on that second part, is out of bounds because the line itself is out of bounds. But if one smidgen of paint is inbounds, that ball is inbounds. Or it lies in or touches the ground or anything else, such as any natural or artificial object inside the boundary edge, or any other part. Okay, now this player may stand out of bounds, which he's basically sort of doing, maybe not quite, but you can stand out of bounds to play a ball on the course. Now, what do you do if it's out of bounds? Well, we know this. You got a penalty stroke. You got to go back where you hit it from. Tells you right there. If it was the putting green, if for some reason you putted it out of bounds, I guess it could happen. You're going to place it. Take a stroke. Now, this is an interesting part of this. Listen up here. There's another exception. Won't we love these exceptions? You got 4 of them here. Here we got an outside influence, that little doggy. Here you got a ball not found in a, well, it's going to tell you what these are in a minute. I may as well let them talk. We're going to have a wrong ball situation here. Instead of taking stroke and distance relief in these situations, when his or her ball hasn't been found and it's known or virtually certain that the ball, and it's going to tell you now what it is, came to rest on the course and was moved by an outside influence, like a dog, played from a wrong ball by another player, played as a wrong ball by another player, or came to rest in or on a movable obstruction, an abnormal course condition. When it's known or virtually certain that that happened, okay. Now, a player, when it's virtually certain that that happened, or is in a penalty area. Now in a penalty area, we get a little different story here. Was deliberately deflected or stopped by any other person. And this is our virtually certain 4 here. Okay. Now let's go to this one. After playing from the teeing area, no matter where the player's ball is on the course, she is not always allowed to play her ball as it lies, but can always play under stroke and distance. Okay, well, we said that. Player can always play under stroke and distance. Player drops a ball in the general area after saying she is going to play under stroke and distance. She is going to play under stroke and distance. If her original ball is found before the end of her 3-minute search time, she can abandon the drop ball and play the original. No. If a ball is found with less than 10 seconds remaining on a player's search time, she is not nearer where the ball is found. She's allowed a reasonable time to get to the ball to promptly identify it, even if that happens after the 3-minute search time has ended. If a player plays under stroke and distance and from a wrong place, the penalty in match play is loss of hole, and in stroke play is 3 strokes. So we're looking here for the false one, and what do we think? Yeah. At this particular, now this, she has not, I stress that because she has not said, I'm going to play a provisional ball. She said, I'm going to play, I choose to play my ball under stroke and distance. So the original ball is found. Hey, Joe, hey, Josephine, my ball's up. No, can't play it. Okay. Any questions on 18.2?
No questions yet.
All right. Okay, now we're going to talk about the provisional ball. When can you do it? How do you do it? And when do you have to get rid of it? Here's our question. Second ball played because the player thought the original ball might not be found either in the general area or in an adjacent penalty area. It's asking which one of these is not a provisional ball. A second ball played because the player hit her original ball into a wooded area she thought was part of a general area, but when she reached the area to search, discovered it was marked as a penalty area. Or C, a second ball played because the player knows if she doesn't find the original, it will be in a penalty area, and if it's not in the penalty area, she knows her ball will be found in the fairway, beyond the penalty area. Or a second ball played after the player and others had started to look for her original ball, but before the 3-minute search time to find it, or there had expired. So now we go, provisional ball. It's another ball that you play in case. You play it provisionally. And remember this, it's not the player's ball in play, unless it subsequently becomes the player's ball in play. Another exam wrecker. All right. Now, you can do it if your ball might be lost outside a penalty area, and I can't stress that enough. You can't play a provisional ball you can't say, I'm playing this because I think my ball is in a penalty area. If you do that, it'll become your ball in play. Okay. Or out of bounds. To save time, that's what this is for. Okay. Now, a player, once again, this is the new thing. If a player is able to return to the spot of his or her previous stroke and play that provisional before the 3-minute search time has ended, the player is allowed to do this. Now, when a ball might be lost in a penalty area, but also might be lost somewhere else, and a lot of times this happens, the original ball might be in a penalty area. It might also be lost outside that penalty area. Now, this ball, I don't know. And only possible place this original ball could be lost would be in this massive penalty area here. Can't do it. Provisional ball is not allowed. Okay. Becomes the player's ball in play if you do that under the stroke and distance penalty. All right. If the provisional ball might be lost, the player may play another provisional ball, and it's going to tell you that that provisional ball has the same relationship to the first provisional ball, and you're going to love this one, that the original ball has. Although we'll read this one. For example, player plays a provisional ball. This is ball 2, believing that his or her tee shot, ball 1, might be lost or out of bounds. Plays this, provisional ball is struck in the same direction as the original ball. That's ball 2, same direction as the original ball 1. Without any announcement, though, he's done it correctly with ball 2, but without saying anything, he or she plays another ball, ball 3 from the tee. Didn't say anything. Didn't say it was a provisional ball, as you'll come to see. And this comes to rest in the fairway. Stay with us. If the original ball is not lost or out of bounds, the player continues with ball 1. Everything's hunky-dory in that respect there. No problem. But, okay, but if ball 3 was played, since it was played without any announcement, the ball is going to be, the player must continue play with the third ball. Therefore, the third ball was a ball substituted for the provisional ball under penalty of stroke and distance, regardless of the provisional ball's location. Player has now taken 5 strokes, including the penalty strokes, with the third ball played from the tee. Didn't say anything. Now that ball's in play. That renders that other provisional ball unplayable. Can't play it. Now you got to announce it, as was just alluded to. Now you got to say so. How do you say it? Can't say certain things, to make it right. Not enough to say, I'm playing another ball, I'm playing again, I'm reloading. None of those things. You've got to use the terminology. You have to use and boy, do I see this constantly when I'm doing an amateur event, or I'm watching, even if I'm doing some professional events at a relatively high level. I use the word provisional. Otherwise, clearly indicate that he or she is playing a ball provisionally. And if you happen to be on the tee in a stroke play event, I think I might help the player by saying, what are you doing here? You have the right to do that. Okay. Playing a ball, these are good ones. Under 18-3, you're rarely going to see that. I'm going to play another just in case. Okay. That's a new one. Used to have to use the word provisional, but I like that because it's just in case the other one's gone. I'm going to reload, or I'm going to play another. Survey says, okay. Now, if you don't announce, as we say, and you do this, whether it's from wherever this previous stroke was made, then that ball is the ball in play under stroke and distance. Now, this is important. When do you have to abandon this thing? You can continue to play the provisional without its losing its status as a provisional, so long as it's played from a spot. This is a very good one here. From a spot that is the same distance or farther from the hole than where the original ball is estimated to be. Estimated to be. Whether that turns out to be true or not, where it's likely to be and estimated to be. That means you can dribble it off the tee and dribble it 17 times till you get down to this place. As I just said, you might think I saw this before. Okay. Now you're going to use the estimated spot for the original ball is likely to be when determining whether the provisional ball has been played from nearer the hole, which would render it the ball in play. Okay. Now it stops being the provisional ball and becomes the ball in play if it's abandoned under 3. And Rule 18 will tell you that shortly. And therefore becomes a wrong ball. Okay. Provisional ball becomes the player's ball in play under penalty of stroke and distance in either of these two cases. When the original ball is lost anywhere on the course, you lose your ball, you got to play a provisional. Or when it's played from the spot nearer the hole and where the original ball is estimated to be. Now, if it's lost anywhere on the course except in a penalty area or is out of bounds, the original ball is no longer in play and is now a wrong ball, must not be played. Okay, or played from the spot near the hole. If he plays a provisional ball into the same general location as the original ball, and you can't identify which of those things is yours, you put up a brand new Titleist 5 on this particular hole, which you certainly can do, and you hit it off into the bulrushes. Then you put another brand new Titleist 5 and you can't determine which one is which. If only one of the balls is found, well, then that ball is going to be treated as, we're going to go with a worst case scenario here. That's going to be treated as your provisional ball. And that now becomes in play under your penalty. Okay? And you can't, if you find the original, if both balls are found on the course, the player must choose one of the balls to be treated as the provisional. You found them both, you can't identify which one is which. In this case, you can choose which one of these is your provisional. This is different than other situations where you can't identify your ball. It's different because you have the provisional in the situation. You can choose which one to be your provisional. The other one is treated as lost. Yes. Did someone chime in? Okay, no problem. Okay, now a player may substitute another ball under a rule when it's known or virtually certain what happened to the ball. Now a player has, this is one that you need to know. A player has an extra option when his, her, or her ball has not been found and it is known or virtually certain that the ball, these are these four things here, has not been found. And it's in one of these, in this case, one of these three things. Deliberately deflected or stopped by any person.
216 the front of the green, 3 wood in hand.
Looks like they're hitting the 3 wood, so they must be going for the green and 2. And what happens? It bounces. Uh-oh, look at these.
Pick it up. Oh, what are they doing?
Oh,
No,
goodness.
stand still.
I would say, although these children were nicely dressed, that they have not been taught properly when it comes to golf etiquette, and that parent there should take them in hand. You're going to have an extra option when you don't find it and it's been deliberately deflected. You can, when one of these rules applies, the player may either substitute an original ball for the original, as allowed under the rule. That's the free relief rules here that happen under here. Or you can play the provisional. You have an option there. You can a choosy. You can play the provisional in these situations. Go back, read 18.3c over a lot of times. It's a fun rule to read. Now you have to abandon it though in either of these cases. When the original ball is found on the course outside a penalty area, before the 3-minute search is over, or when the original ball is found in a penalty area, then you have to deal with the original ball and play under the penalty area rule, even though you got to abandon this provisional ball in that case. The other things I mentioned previously on these previous slides, you got the choosing. Here you don't. Okay, player may play the original ball as it lies, obviously. But if it's found in a penalty area or known or virtually certain to be in a penalty area, the player must either play the original as it lies or take penalty relief under Rule 17. In either case, you don't make any more strokes with the provisional, which is now a wrong ball. And all strokes with that provisional ball before it was abandoned do not count. And we always talk about any penalty strokes solely from playing the ball. And that means anything. It's better to go with the ones that are from play. If you gave advice, that's not from playing the ball, or things like that. You're going to get a penalty added, even though we say some of those strokes don't count. Those might. Okay. Once again, we have the multiple breaches. Let's read this. Which of the following second balls, announced as a provisional ball by the player and then played, is in play under stroke and distance and not. We're looking for the one that is not to be considered a provisional ball. A second ball played because the player thought her original ball might not be found in either the general area or in an adjacent penalty area. So she's got that penalty area in there. A second ball played because the player hit her original ball into a wooded area she thought was part of the general area, but when she reached the area to search, discovered it was marked as a penalty area. Okay? We want the one that is not a provisional ball. A second ball played because the player knows if she doesn't find her original ball, it will be in a penalty area, and if it is not in the penalty area, she knows her ball will be found in the fairway beyond the penalty area. A second ball played after the player and others had started to look for her ball, original ball, but before the 3-minute search time to find it had expired. What do you think? Here's our answer. It's a second ball because she's playing a ball because she thinks that her ball is in a penalty area, a provisional ball. And we know she cannot do that. Okay. Questions?
Clark, real quick on the 3-minute search. Like if after a minute I go back to the tee, it takes me a minute to get there. I hit it. Do I have a minute now to find?
No.
You know, does the time keep going, or does the time
Keeps
stop?
going. That's why I said you got to be a fast runner to do this. And I've seen it done, but only once. But you are allowed to do it. But you don't get any more time. That clock keeps ticking.
Okay.
There are times when the clock stops ticking. If you're looking for your ball and you have to, and there's a group has to come through or somehow play, you have to let a group pass, or things, just
right.
Common sense things. Your time will stop, but not here. You got to hustle back there to do it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other one? Okay. Look at that. I believe that we have finished. Now, we were going to talk about believe we were going to talk about this. Was there anything else I was going to do about the section hard card, I think? But in this case, since we have with us one of our beloved rules officials who now have basically left our area as far as being in a club, in clubs are concerned, and is on that wonderful Champions Tour. We have Mr. Tom Karpus. I just wondered if Tom might like to comment a little bit on, because he helped me and our staff, Jeffrey and our staff, come up with our section hard card, which I'm sure mirrors the one that Tom uses on the tour. Is that okay, Tom? Is it okay if you chime in here?
Sure. I don't have a problem doing that, Clarky, if you'd like me to.
Good, because you're much more expert in this than I.
Okay. Well, it would be true that the section hard card, which is electronically, I believe it's on our website, and then and these are the things that are in effect for all events, and it does mirror PGA of America generally, and we also obviously very, very similar to the PGA Tour, with a few exceptions, because the tours, we all use the same hard card, whether it be Korn Ferry, Champions Tour, or the regular tour. So with that, I'm going to just go through a couple things that I think are, well, why have a hard card? I know when I worked at Kennett Square Country Club, I had my own hard card, if you will, that was all the things that were in place for every event. And then on the other side of the sheet, I would have the notice to the players, which would have what tees we're playing from, the format, if we were playing preferred lies, whatever other information, how we're going to decide ties, all those to be on the other side. But I think terms of competition and local rules would be on your hard card. And I would just say that at the club level, really important that you spell these out. Because remember, with model local rules, if you don't enact them, the rules of golf apply. And I'll give you some examples of why it would be important to make sure that you put these, publish them to your players. So when you go through various pieces of, like for example, out of bounds. We normally say out of bounds about if you have a public road, statements like that, where if the ball were to come to rest, cross a road and come to rest on another part of the course, the ball's out of bounds if it crossed a public road. There's language like that. Penalty areas, like, if you have a dropping zone, who can use the dropping zone? Is it for, if you have both red and yellow, if the ball last crossed the edge where it's yellow, generally they would be able to use the DZ for that. The other piece is this opposite margin deal, that if you don't say anything about it, the player does not have the opposite margin relief option for any of your red penalty areas. It's only if you say so. And I'll give you an example would be at the Masters, like on hole number 13, they allow the players to use the opposite margin on hole 13. Same thing on 2, I believe. 2 and 13 at the Masters, they enacted for those two red penalty areas. And that would, if you think of 13, player tries to cut the corner and the ball hits up in the azaleas and enters the penalty area on the left side. It's pretty thick in there. They're taking a penalty stroke. If you didn't give the player the opposite margin, they would have to drop on that side. So in this case, since they're paying a penalty stroke, we let them come over. So you want to take a look at your course. You're at a club, or if you're involved with a committee. I know we got some people that get involved with high school and college golf, taking a look if you're at a competition, if there's any courses, any holes that you would want to allow this opposite margin option. Well, then you would put that on your notice to the players so that they know. Back on the line relief, very important that you say that this local rule is in effect, because it gives you, it's now basically, as Clarky mentioned, it eliminates the trap. And essentially, you say, well, why was this put in place? Well, remember, when we go back on the line, we're supposed to choose a reference point, and not everybody does that. And if you don't choose a reference point and you drop it a little bit to the side of that line, well, then the rule chooses it for you. It says that the spot on the line that is equidistant from that is your reference point. Well, there were cases that were discovered very early on where a player would drop a ball without marking or choosing a reference point. And if the ball rolled for a few inches forward and they played it, they would have been playing from a wrong place. So hence the R&A and the USGA got together very quickly after the new code came out and said, you know what, we need to allow people to, we need to eliminate this trap. So essentially now when you drop the ball, you still have to drop it in your relief area. But as long as it doesn't roll more than a club length, the ball is going to be in play and you're going to be okay. Even if it rolled a little bit forward and you didn't choose a reference point. And that's really the gist of that back on the line relief. In the area of abnormal course conditions, a few things, sod seams. All the major associations have this on their hard cards. You should have it at your club. And all that means is you're restricting relief to the lie of the ball and your area of intended swing only, not for stance. So you could have an area that was sodded maybe several weeks before that competition. It's fully knitted. The grass is great, but there's still some remnants of the seam. So you're going to give relief from the seam for lie of the ball and area of intended swing, but not solely because their stance interferes with it. So that's on our hard card. That's important. Again, these are things you would want to put in place at your clubs as well, because remember, if you don't enact them, then they're not in effect. Going down my list here. The tours now, we use the immovable obstructions close to the putting green local rule. So that means if the obstruction is within 2 club lengths of the putting green and your ball is within 2 club lengths of the obstruction, we give relief for line of play. And what we do is we do restrict it to say that both the ball and the obstruction need to be in an area of the course mowed at fairway height or less. So if you're in the rough, you don't get relief. But if in a case where it's a closely mown area, you would. Now, this can be a little tricky at the club level. You know, I know at Kennett, we didn't put it in place because my fear was that people wouldn't understand it. And there's some things that you can get into that can create some confusion. We didn't have that many sprinkler heads, or usually it's the sprinkler heads close to the putting green. We didn't have that many of them where it was applicable, so we didn't put it in place. But you may want to, but you want to make sure you educate your members or customers on how to take relief for that. There is a new model local rule that's going to be going on all the hard cards across all the allied associations that was adopted after a few incidents, and that is this issue. The heading is going to say ball played from putting green accidentally hits the player's club used by the player, or an animal also defined as a loose impediment. Well, what does this mean? Well, this goes back to, we had a ruling with Jesper Parnevik on our tour where he went to tap the ball in and he backhanded it and the ball hit him in the foot. He then tapped it in, went and teed off on the next hole. And of course, the rule, without a local rule, says that when you do that, if the ball hits any person, any animal, or any movable obstruction that from the putting green, that the stroke is canceled and must be replayed. Well, this created a little bit of an issue because you have a case where, and this could happen, think about a member guest. You got all kinds of people, confusion, lots of people out there. If a player did this, imagine if they went to tap it in and it hit him in the foot, and then they called for a ruling right away. So just imagine this for a moment. I backhand my ball and it misses, let's say it lips out, hits me in the foot. The rule says cancel replay. So I'm going to get to put the ball back. The stroke doesn't count. And I'm going to replay the stroke. I'm going to get a do-over for being the village idiot, essentially. So now this model local rule will say that if it hits the player, the club he used for the stroke, this stroke would count, and you play the ball as it lies by local rule. Really important. The other piece to this too is a ball that were to hit an animal that is defined as a loose impediment. Let's say insect or worm. Very important. And we had a case with, it almost happened to Paul Casey. He actually won the tournament, but he putted and there was a bug running across the putting green. And there was a question of whether or not the ball hit the bug, because the rule says it didn't matter if it was deflected or not. It just says if it hits it, it's a cancel and replay. And I don't think we want to, if we hit a worm, let's say you're playing after a rainstorm. So this is a new local rule. It's on the USGA's website if you want the verbiage. It will be on our section hard card. And so just a quick point about that. Let's see here. Clubs. We know that, and I think everybody is aware of the model local rule for damaged clubs, which without the local rule, if you damage a club, no matter how you damage it, even if it's just through making a stroke and the club breaks, you cannot replace it. So the model local rule essentially allows a player, except for cases of abuse, if a club is significantly damaged and bent, they can replace the club. But there are some exceptions. You want to make sure you look at those. One, which is if the club face is cracked, if it's deformed, he could replace it. But just a mere hairline crack does not in of itself allow a player to replace that club. So important to take a peek at that, making sure it's on your hard card. It is on our sections. And two other little bits that I want to throw in here. One is because it came up, someone called me last year, and I see it quite a bit at the club level now when I go out and play. Everybody's got music playing. And we know that in the rules 4.3, music, if you just have it as background music, no problem. But if you say, well, I always play like Clarky, he likes to play Mozart when he plays because it calms him down and it really helps his tempo quite a bit. But if that's the reason he's using it, well, that's a breach. But generally speaking, background music is not a breach. So what you find is you get at member guests, people playing music. There is a local rule, mind you, in the back of the official guide, by the way. There's a whole section on model local rules in the back, and they're divided categories. But if you wanted to make a local rule which prohibited the use of music, you could. Now, I don't know how that would go over with your committees, but if you get someone on one of your committees that brings it up because they're ticked off because one of the people plays music loudly, well, again, you could put a local rule in that prohibits it. But be careful. I mean, I think background music, as long as it's not real loud, I think that would be, it's what you see all the time now. The last thing is, while on your notice is to make sure, and we all do this, we know about deciding ties. You want to specifically say how you're going to determine how you're going to break a tie in your events. And for example, in match play now, the default is that you're going to keep playing until you have a winner. But you could, if you want to just declare the match a tie, let's say it's a team event, like a Ryder Cup format, where each side would get a half a point, you want to specify that on your notice. In a stroke play event, how are you going to use a match of cards? Are you going to have a playoff? Whatever that may be, you want to make sure it's spelled out. And the other little piece to this too that I think is important is making sure that if you're going to have a playoff, that you specify when the playoff will begin. And I'll give you an example. Several years ago, a long time ago, maybe when I first got to Kennett Square, we always used playoffs for determining the winner of an event. So we said, we used to say immediately at the conclusion of play. You would think that would be tight enough. Anyway, we get a playoff. We go up to the first tee, and one of the guys in the playoff was not on site. We're looking for him, and here he called and said he had run back to his house, and now he's on his way back to the golf course. And the question was did he meet the requirement to be in the playoff? When he wasn't there right away and we got into a gray area, we let him play. So then what we did is the following year, or right away, we said 10 minutes after play had concluded. And we actually put a time on it. So if play concluded at 3:30 in the afternoon, we would, once the results were posted, we would announce that there's going to be a sudden death playoff and that the playoff will begin at 3:40. Everybody would hear it. Now that's treated like a starting time. And that's important because now if everybody gets there early, you can start early. We do this at PGA of America all the time. We say playoff we'll put it up on the scoreboard, or we'll announce playoff will begin, what time. And this eliminates all the BS if somebody were to disappear. And, because the question is, how long would you wait for somebody? And I think that I always think when you can eliminate shades of gray and make your competitions bulletproof, why not do that? And that, just like when you're setting up defining your starting area, when is a player on the tee ready to play at the time laid down by the committee? Same thing with your scoring area. Whether you use a tent, put a rope around it, put paint on the ground, how you want to use the whole club patio for shotgun events. Defining that is really important. And you think, well, that's really, isn't that overboard? Well, you know what? Here's the thing. If nothing happens and everybody's on time, or everybody gets their card right when they're returning their scorecards, you won't have any problems. But all it takes is one incident where a player is late to the tee, and if you don't have the area marked, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. And scoring is a good example. Several years ago at I think it was the district championship, I get a phone call after the event, and here was one of the people on the committee, and it was a shotgun event. And here with this one of the boys signed his card, turned it in, and then he was still sitting on the patio, not far from where the committee had a table accepting scorecards. Shortly thereafter, the kid went back over to the table because he thought he might have made a mistake, and here he did. He had wrote down a score lower than he actually had on a hole. And this committee disqualified the kid. So there were some people that weren't happy about that. I get a phone call, and I said, well, okay. I said, all right, he turned his card in. I said, did he leave the scoring area? And there was dead silence on the other end of the phone. And they said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, it's not the handing of the card. It's when they leave the scoring area. Because as long as they haven't left the scoring area, you can make any changes on the card that you need to. And I said, did you have the scoring area defined? And they said, no. So I said, well, if you don't have the scoring area defined, how do you know when someone has left it? It'd be different if he jumped in the car and got 10 miles down the road and then came back. I think that's pretty cut and dry. But this kid was sitting right on the patio, never left the patio where all the kids were sitting after they returned the cards. And this meant this kid, if he would have qualified for the state championship, I believe, he would have gone to the next level. So I said, in my view, the committee made a mistake by not defining the scoring area, and there is no basis to disqualify this kid. And sure enough, they reinstated him. They adjusted his card to the higher score, and as they should have. And but it was a case where, now had the committee defined it properly and he left the scoring area, well, then it's too late. He is disqualified. But one of those things where at the club level, really important that you do that. And keep in mind, you're going to see in the next, I think this morning, might have already been announced, distance measuring devices, just as a point of interest. PGA of America just announced that they're going to allow distance measuring devices in all of the spectator championships. So Senior PGA, KPMG, and the PGA Championship players will be allowed to use distance measuring devices. So the first association to allow this in spectator events. So we'll see what happens with the others. I know LPGA was toying with this idea for a few years, but didn't pull the trigger. We'll see how this affects what others will do. I'm sure I'll be hearing from my tour friends. We allow it in our Monday Qs. We allow it at Q School. So we'll see what happens. But just an interesting tidbit that's going to get announced this morning. I'm sure it may already be out there. But with that, that's all I really got. I think the main thing is to make sure that if you're at a club, that you go look at your golf course, look at all the things unique to your course, see if there's any local rules that you need to put in place. Make up your own hard card, put it on your bulletin boards or what have you. And then obviously you're going to have that available to all your players for every event that you have at the club. And Clark, you got anything to add?
No, I knew you'd have some interesting anecdotes, and that's very important, I think. No, I think we've covered it quite well. I would invite any criticisms that any of our participants have. They can email me or text me anything that they think we could do better. As far as these things are concerned, I would really welcome that. Honestly, not a problem. Any suggestions about my singing, or maybe I'm a little off key or something, you can tell me.
The Velvet Fog, isn't that was Mel Torme, right?
Torme, the Velvet Fog. Yep.
Well, the only thing I would say is I know I look forward to the time when we can get back in the same room and interact with each other and do these things in person. While this is a great alternative for us, and Matt Fry has done a great job with making this all happen through technology, which I think is great. It's the next best thing. But boy, it'll be nice to get back into a room where we can do this in person, and so I look forward to that day, and I appreciate everybody jumping on these programs. If you want us to continue them, Clarky and I have talked about it. I mean, we can always come up with something. They don't have to be 2 hours. If there's a specific topic that you think, hey, it'd be nice to have our section rules committee, and of course we've got Alice and Jeff Kitty as well in the national committee, and then our Mark Monahan and Ben Debsky and some other people in our section rules committee. If there's anything that we need to have one of these programs for, we certainly can add one.
I agree.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for all your hard work. And thank you, everybody who attended today and participated. As I mentioned, the recording will be up on the YouTube channel in a few days. And if you have any questions, or like Tom just mentioned, would like to see additional rules webinars, please give us a shout and we'll see what we can do.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much.
God bless you all.